Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Here Be Dragons. It's me, Steven, John, as per usual. Nessie sent us a message some time ago. Family stuff came up, and she's not able to make it tonight. We love you, sis. I keep missing her.
I know. I understand obviously, but I read that message and I was like, oh, damn it. Uh, just we need our Nessie.
yeah, we do. I miss her, man.
Yeah.
Um, that being said, I just want to say something off the top before we get into the meat of the conversation. I really want to start talking more about D&D on this channel. I've said it before, John. I know that's not your thing, but it's just an excuse for you to have a week off anyway. Um, there's a lot of shakeups. Like the next iteration of the game is on the horizon, and they're doing playtesting stuff now, and they're releasing all kinds of playable content that's like, hey, try this, give us your feedback, and tell us what you think. And I think it'd be really cool to have a conversation with some friends who understand that about what we think and just make our voices heard. Anyway, that's more a mid-roll thing, but I'm just I wanted to talk about that. I want to make sure y'all know that kind of conversation is coming, probably sooner rather than later, because they've started rolling out this. They call it Unearthed Arcana. It's unofficial rules for play, but it's testing for the next iteration of the game. So yeah, I'm excited. But we're not here to talk about D&D. We're here to talk about Spider-Man,
Hold on a
Spider
second.
hyphen man.
Um, I'm hearing some kind of buzz when you talk, and I'm not sure if it's
Is
you
that
or if
better?
it's my sound.
Is that better?
No, it's like some kind of distortion that comes in occasionally. If anybody else hears it, let us know because it
Yeah,
might
let me
just
know
be
if something about my audio is not right. It
yeah, it
nothing.
might be on my end because
It might be.
I think I also heard something during the countdown. So
Yeah,
if it
Amy says Amy says they don't hear a buzz.
okay, all right,
So it's
well, it's
probably
probably something with.
just one more way I get to annoy you.
I mean, yeah, I won't really be able to tell the difference.
Right.
No. Um, but yeah, we're talking about Spider-Man 2, and I got to tell you, Steven, I had an absolute blast rewatching this today.
So did I. It was a
It's
lot of fun.
yeah, it's fantastic. It
Like,
like
oh, please go ahead. You first, buddy. You first.
well, no, it was because it has been a while since I sat down and watched the whole thing, and
Me too.
I've always known it's one of my favorite comic book films, and I know we're not in agreement on this one, but it is my favorite Spider-Man film, and but when you've been away from something for a while, you can come back to it with a refreshed perspective, and I was just delighted by not only how well it stands up, but the fact that I think my enjoyment of it has actually increased.
I think mine did too. I saw this whole film differently. Just there's a new, as you say, it had been a while for me too, and given time, your lens on the world changes as you change as a person, and it just was so different. Although my favorite bits were still my favorite bits. Um, we'll talk about it more at length, but that train scene is maybe one of my favorite superhero movie sequences ever. It's so good. But let's uh let's not get off into the weeds just yet.
I know because I think there's going to be a lot of individual scenes that we break
Mhm.
down because for me uh and as you say, we'll talk about this stuff in more detail as we go, but I had so much more appreciation for the artistry behind the Doc Ock surgery scene and
It was
like
horrifying, man.
how amazing that is. Yeah. So.
And it's like, it's definitely Raimi as well.
Yeah.
Like his fingerprints are all over that, the way the camera is used in this film, and like I love that. I do. It's very like it's kinetic when it needs to be kinetic. There are shots where the camera is just holding and letting what's happening play out. And sometimes it really almost it feels slow in the way it lets some scenes progress, but that's almost an artistic choice. The way the camera's just watching, and he's just revealed to Aunt May everything about what happened with Uncle Ben, and she gets up and walks away, and
there's
the camera
so
doesn't
much.
move.
Yeah, there's so much about this film that, especially at the time, you wouldn't have expected to find in a superhero movie. That just the movie is more about Peter Parker's life than anything else. And
I heard an analogy recently. DC superheroes and Marvel superheroes are different because DC superheroes are gods pretending to be humans, whereas Marvel superheroes are humans with godlike powers. And Peter Parker really encompasses in that in a way even that other Marvel heroes don't. He is such the every person.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, scenes like the confession scene to Aunt May, it sits still, and there's even no score there. It's just having to listen to this, the scene unfold and knowing how painful it is, and you're just, it's agonizing, just like sitting there and having to go through it almost. It's so, but it's beautifully done because oh, Potter.
Never change, Potter. Look, we're grinning and laughing, so must be doing something right.
But as I said, we don't feel the need to go on to number 3.
Right, like we're not in a hurry to get to Spider-Man 3. This movie really is kind of ageless. It's 2004, so it's not quite 20 years, which is why I didn't label this a retro review.
But like I could tell in our conversation about the first film that I was like, I really want to dive into talking about number 2
because it's so good.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna lie, there were times where I thought the pacing in especially in the early parts of the film, was a little slow. But that pacing is a thing I often complain about, and it's a personal taste thing sometimes. But man, once this film gets rolling, it's fun and it's surprisingly emotional.
I think, and that's fine. Everybody has, their different preferences. I actually rather like the fact that I made note of the fact that that Otto doesn't become, Doc Ock until a bit of a ways into the film. And so the first portion of the film really is about sort of setting up Peter Parker's life and why he's not happy. And for me, like, I like that about it, that it sort of takes its time setting up those things, because that's what the film at its heart is about. And so, yeah, I like that about it. And, yeah, it's just like even like, I guess we can talk about like the beginning of the film. I love the stuff with, him working the pizza delivery and, and like one of my favorite bits has always been when, he's running late and, it's like
the broom closet bit.
Well, even before that, it's like, you have to go so many, miles in in this many minutes, or your ass is fired. And then it's just this dramatic pause, and then he goes, go! Great.
That's good stuff, man. Again, it's the little things like that, and just the commitment to the character that everybody is making. Like Asif Manvi, I've seen him in other things, but he's a pizza guy. But
this was like the first, because I wasn't watching like the Daily Show at this time, which is where I think most people probably were aware of him from. This was my introduction to him, and then later when I watched the Daily Show, I was like, oh, it's Peter's boss.
Pizza guy.
And he just made such a wonderful. It's great when you get those actors to come in for bit parts, and they really do make the most of it. And that's definitely an example.
Bruce Campbell does play the snooty usher. It's hilarious.
He's great. Yeah.
Another cameo, just since we're on the topic, Joel McHale is in this, who he was in one of my favorite shows of all time, Community.
Which, I would never have known like who he was back in 2004. Without a doubt.
Well, neither did I.
Yeah, and so, but then when I saw him, I was like, "Oh, I know him."
Right.
Yeah, no, it's great. But speaking of the beginning, like the discussion has to start off with that absolutely stunning main title sequence, which is still my favorite of any. Like, I think it's got to be my favorite main title sequence out of any, definitely Marvel films, and possibly.
I don't know if I agree with you on that visually. It was good, but like, I don't know if I agree it's the best. But you know what I will say? Danny Elfman was crushing it in that moment.
Really? You don't like? I'm in absolute love with the artwork, and
I mean, it's good. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know that I would rank it the best. That's all I'm saying. It's a lot of Marvel movies to compare it to. You know what I mean? And there have been some great Marvel movies. There have been some not so great Marvel movies. Let's be honest. But this is one of the better ones. Like, Spider-Man is that character that speaks to so many people because he's the one that's most like them when a lot of them start reading comics. He's just a kid. That's literally a line from the movie. He's just a kid.
Yeah. And things that I've always really liked about, in particular, Tobey Maguire's take on Peter is, and I say this with all the affection in the world, he really is a nerd.
He really is.
It's like, especially like, the bits when you get to the raindrops keep falling on your head sequence, and then when he's trying to get his powers back and the slow motion running with his face, it's like,
like
he's so determined.
He really he will give that ugly tri-face.
Yeah.
He'll give it all day. He does it quite a few times. Again, the train scene has ugly tri-face in it.
Yeah.
But like, it still takes itself seriously in world. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. And like, let's just hand wave away the, hello, everybody. These are my cybernetic, artificially intelligent arms that I'm just going to casually attach to my spine and then fire up nuclear fusion while you stand there and watch.
Yeah, I remember hearing somebody say, like, well, why is like that not the main attraction? Like,
right.
But of course,
but like comic book movie, like, we forgive certain storytelling sins because like this isn't trying to be that script. It's trying to be Spider-Man.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, what were you saying about it takes itself seriously, but it's still got that, wacky absurdity. It's a Sam Raimi movie. That's, that's exactly what he does. Like, the emotion is is serious, but there's also just going to be some really ludicrous stuff in there, and that's why we love these movies. So
Yeah, it's really good. I'm not gonna lie, it's really good. And like having seen, um, oh God, what was that one called? No Way Home.
mhm.
Where we get the return of this character and Doc Ock. Like it really does. Like it just new context. Watching this movie, having not seen it in so long, knowing what becomes in an alternate storyline. Like it's good. It's good. It was fun to have that in the back of my head while watching this.
Yeah, when he says trying to do better, I did have that.
Mm-hmm.
The Peter Tingle.
Yeah.
No, it's absolutely wonderful, um and as far as like what we're talking about connections to um to the later films and stuff, I also got a kick out of the fact that there's a Doctor Strange name drop
Mm-hmm.
in this, and the fact that Sam Raimi would later go on
That's
to
good, but it's
direct.
taken.
Yeah, that's just one of those happy accidents that you could never plan for. Which, by the way, like I still like. I know he's like a most minor characters, but I love that character who's played by Sam Raimi's brother, who just casually pops up out of nowhere when the guy at the newspaper, who he just like
keeps walking. The guy that keeps walking in.
yeah, and like
Okay.
he's nowhere to be found, and all of a sudden he pops his head in frame and says something. I just love it.
Yeah, again, there is a wackiness, but like the characters that live in the world don't notice that it's weird when it's weird.
Yeah.
This is funny. Iron Man discovers a new element in his basement, so Doc Ock is okay. I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. I love Iron Man 2. I know that's not the popular opinion, but I don't care. I love that movie. But this is Spider-Man 2, not Iron Man 2. Kirsten Dunst. Mary Jane is a fun character, not a very deep character. They don't give her as much to do as maybe I would hope. But that's a Spider-Man story. I get it.
Yeah, we can't escape the fact that she's still her purpose in the story is to serve Peter's character as the love interest. But I do like the fact that in this one she does have agency.
She does.
And she, she pushes back, and and then especially at the end of the film, she says, respect me enough to let me make this decision for myself.
That's true.
But I don't want to get away from the fact that obviously,
it's not terrible, but like I wish she had more to do. I will say because her big thing is choosing which man to go to, and like let's have a deeper story.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying like it's not a big leap, but I do like.
But she does like tell the one like let me have agency to choose, and I like that. And I will say there's a shot of her like running through a courtyard in her dress or whatever, and the look of pure joy on Kirsten Dunst's face. I'm like, that's like, it was so heartwarming. Like Kirsten Dunst, she's a fine actress. I can kind of take her or leave her, to be honest with you. I think she's good. She's never blown me away, but I do love her actually in this movie. Like, I think this one, and obviously she's good in everything she does. I'm just never, maybe it's just that she plays some of those parts where I don't watch those movies, question mark.
Mm.
but she is great in this. She really is.
Yeah, and then we get to cap it all off with, go get 'em, Tiger, which is such a Mary Jane thing, from the comics and stuff. So, it's fantastic. I love that. That's where this movie leaves off, and for me, it's the perfect ending. and let's just not worry about that other film.
Right. You know what? Actually, we can sandbag it all we want. There are elements of the third film that are good.
And I know it has its fans.
Yeah.
So
it's very uneven. Whereas this movie is not very uneven. This movie is very good. Like, it does a great. So Spider-Man as a character is so resonant. He's probably the most popular superhero of all time at this point.
Yeah.
Superman and Batman, super popular characters as well, of course. But Spider-Man changed a generation. And the first film is very much that sort of like coming of age story, which we talked about a month and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
This film is the first time where it's like, okay, I've been adulting for a while and stuff sucks. Now what? And this is what the movie's really about at its heart. Maybe not the soul of the movie, or maybe I got that backwards, but like Peter coming to terms with the fact that you can't save everyone. You do the best you can. You find your happiness where you can. You trust the people you care about the most. And sometimes you put your head down and you do the hard thing. But you can't do it alone. I couldn't do what we do alone. Like,
Yeah, and
have I ever streamed solo? Basically, almost never. It's been a couple of times, but like,
nope. Yeah, and I do think that is the heart of the movie, because like that is sort of the axis on which everything spins. He can't do the superhero thing unless unless he's squared away emotionally. Like that's what it all comes down to. And one of my favorite bits is when especially when he goes to the event where Mary Jane ends up becoming engaged to Jameson's son, and like throughout that whole scene, like it's just got bits of him not being able to get the drink, or all that stuff, and then he gets slapped by Harry, and then the proposal thing happens, and like it just keeps like hammering home like how bad Peter's life is, like how miserable he is, and how he feels like he just keeps getting stepped on, and it's like it's no wonder he's down and out. But it's just great because makes this superhero movie about the sucky life of Peter Parker. and that's what I think is so great about it, because it's just so emotionally resonant, because we can all identify with those periods in life where we just feel like it's one bad thing after another, and we can't catch a break.
And they do a really good job, and it's been quite a bit of the movie just making us feel bad for Peter, more or less.
Yeah.
So, again, I wish Mary Jane had more to do, but I just fell in love with Kirsten Dunst this time in a way I don't think I did in previous times I've watched the film. which was nice. You know, it was a really great experience to have.
Yeah, I mean, we can, there's certainly things to be critical about as far as how the part of Mary Jane is written, but Kirsten Dunst is just radiant, like I'm not just talking about like in a superficial way that she looks beautiful, but just her performance, the sparkle in her eyes at certain points.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of my favorite bits is when she's on stage and she sees that Peter has come there, and there's just something about the way she plays that moment of shock and surprise, and
Here's the thing:
she's great.
Who loves Peter Parker?
Yeah.
And there is more to her character than that. You know, she's got a successful career, but like she loves him, and I think she's pretty clear about that from the get-go. It's Peter who's playing coy because of his difficulties with trying to live a double life. Um, and she is, but she's also respects herself enough not to let her attentions just be rebuffed and not say something and not seek out happiness elsewhere. Like, she's her own woman.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just spoiled with modern storytelling, even. You know what I mean?
Well, you should be.
Yeah.
That's progress. It's disingenuous. It's disingenuous to look. It's disingenuous. It would be disingenuous to look back on this and say there's no room for improvement. They did a great job. Like we've definitely seen great steps forward in that regard, and so even though I absolutely adore this film and I do think it's a masterpiece, but it is also a product of its time, and we have moved on in certain respects. And so even though I love the movie, I love her performance in it, but yeah, they could have done better, and then in years since, we have done better. So
Right. Yeah, I think Zendaya's MJ is also great. You know, I don't want to necessarily spend a whole lot of time comparing the two interpretations of Spider-Man's love interest. I think they've done a lot right with Zendaya's character.
mm-hmm.
But something about the way Kirsten Dunst carried this one, just I was like, no, this is great, man. This is awesome, and I love it. And
what I referencing back to the shot you mentioned at the end of the film, and she's running with her wedding dress on and stuff. What I also love is, and we mentioned this about coming to it with sort of fresh eyes and fresh perspective. Back in 2004, which was like 18 years ago, my experiences, like a movie watcher, was different to what it is today. So I remember even thinking, well, that's a little cheesy, isn't it? Because it is very Sam Raimi and over the top of stuff. But then I was watching it, and I was like, no, I freaking adore that. And just because I now appreciate things that aren't just sort of done the traditional way. I appreciate like out of the box camera work and and editing and cinematography and all that.
And so like you bring it up, I want to talk about, we'll call them creature effects for the arms.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually so good. Like they hold up. There's some CG that's a little like, the physics of their CG is pretty good, except for one scene which is terrible, which is also during the train. But nothing is perfect. You don't throw somebody forward on a train, have them fly through the footpath, and then they come out behind you. That's not how physics works.
Well, yeah, but it
But
all
like,
just
oh well,
the physics may be off, but like the choreography of everything and the look of it is just so, and the editing is it's so great that Like, I don't even know that I noticed that. I probably will now when I go back. But yeah, and the only thing about the CGI was I noticed, like, this is right when they were at that point where they were starting to do like portions of sequences with full CG characters, and it's a little better. I think it's better than what we saw the year before with the Matrix films. But you can still see that this is sort of a transition where they're doing it, but it's not quite seamless, because you can tell like one shot is the real actor and then the next is a fully animated version of that actor. But that said, you know,
they're pretty good still.
Yeah, I think in context, like, it's damn good. And I'd say all the like stuff with, you know, Spidey, you know, swinging through the air and stuff looks fantastic.
Great.
Yeah,
looks great.
But,
who else? Like James Franco, he really had to play a lot of different stuff too. And like with the scene with him slapping Peter those couple of times, like, ooh.
Here's the thing, and I'm going to be blunt here. I've never been a fan of James Franco.
Okay, fair enough.
I just have never really cared for his acting. I'll be honest. I think he's better when he's playing, like, when he does have those sort of moments of anger that break through, where he is just, instead of acting like this adult in charge of this major corporation, he just, you see that this is a hurt kid who's lost his father. And I think he's actually really good in those moments. It's just the times when he's acting very, you know, powerful. It's
but like, I don't know if I agree with you, because my interpretation is he is that scared kid pretending to be in control.
Okay.
He's really not. So like the fact that you can see through him, to me, says you're seeing that he's acting in such a way that he is informing you what he wants you to think, but you're still seeing through it. I think it's actually a really good job, because Harry is that scared kid pretending to be in control.
Okay, I'll give him that.
Yeah, just chew on it. Just chew on it. You know.
That said, I still have never really cared for other stuff I've seen him in either.
It's fine. You know, you don't have to like him.
Yeah.
I'm not here to crusade for James Franco. I've liked him in some stuff, other stuff I'm like, whatever. I thought he was hilarious in what is it, Pineapple Express? But that's a stoner movie that you've probably never seen.
I don't know if I've seen that one, but I did see something. I can't remember what it was, but it was one of those types of films. Anyway, let's not get into talking about the filmography of James Franco.
Right. Let's steer this back. Brother-in-law of Alison Brie. I know nobody. Alison Brie, who is one of my like celebrity crushes, also from Community. Anyway, sorry, off in the weeds even further.
But
I'm going to go back to what I was saying a minute ago about the practical effects that they used for the arms, especially. There were a lot of shots of the arms, and you're like, you know, that's a real one. You can tell it's not the CG one. You can tell the CG ones look great. I think it's a lot easier to do things that aren't like human faces, so to speak. But
yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, like, on the topic of the CGI, like, and it's funny because I was going to use this. I was going to use this turn of phrase when talking about the first film versus this one. I was going to say Spider-Man walked, so Spider-Man 2 could run. But actually, you could say the same thing about this film and then the computer effects work that you see in, for instance, Spider-Man No Way Home.
Mm-hmm.
where like that's why you have some stuff that maybe wasn't perfect, when they were first doing it, but then when you see what it's led to, you got probably got CGI doubles galore in the latter film, and it's so seamless and beautiful. That's what special effects is all about. You have to try things so that down the
Right.
line they're perfected.
Right. And like any part of the process of filmmaking, it's a thing that is iterated on over time, and sometimes you have something that's groundbreaking, and then that just becomes the new standard. Like I think about Star Wars when I think,
Mhm.
or specifically I think about ILM, because they just started reimagining how to do everything, and eventually it became the way you did everything. And ILM is still great at what they do, but sometimes you have to have somebody else come along and have a new idea, even.
Well, that's I mean, we saw that happen with obviously me never passing up an opportunity to mention Lord of the Rings, but what happened with those films where um, they needed to create a special effects house in their own
I was
backyard, and that's how we got Weta Digital.
I was
Um,
literally thinking about Weta.
yeah, and then you have the motion capture technology that they use for Gollum, which then just took off, and everybody uses that. And uh, yeah, so you need that to push forward. But speaking of ILM, I did start watching the first few minutes of that multi-part documentary that they dropped on Disney Plus, and so far it's great. So I'd recommend that for anybody who likes
I,
special effects.
I think Mom was watching that. I saw something in passing on the TV in her bedroom, and I think that must have been what it was. So yeah.
I mean, you can't go wrong with Lucasfilm documentaries because usually they're great.
But
Um,
again, we're off in the weeds again in a whole other direction. But yeah, I really did appreciate, like, from putting the money in the bags, and a lot of people were being held by practical arm,
yeah, no,
uh,
it's great,
and a lot of it's like just the way that you move the camera and the gimbal against the green screen, and like when he grabs MJ, when Doc Ock grabs MJ from the bank and runs off, or not MJ, he grabs him from the diner
yeah,
and he runs off, and like there's it's not perfect. Like that's where you can see some of those flaws, but it's really good.
yeah, no, like it's still beautiful work. That's the thing. I always say that I don't mind seeing the seams and computer effects
Right.
if they're still beautiful to look at. Um,
By the
and
way, yeah, there's Mom saying yes, it was excellent. I thought that's what I saw.
yeah, I just love that sequence. So much of it is good. The stuff with Doc Ock and the arms, how they're like, beaks and stuff. And I love when it says, find Spider-Man or I'll tear the flesh off her bones. And then the thing goes, it's it's so
It
great.
had personality. I
Yeah.
literally okay. So if I may go down a rabbit hole that will lead us somewhere. Um, I love the octopus. Many of you who know me very well know that I love the octopus. It's my second favorite animal. Number one, crow. Number two, octopus. An octopus is a fascinating creature who has a distributed nervous system. It has sort of a simple brain, but each tentacle does technically kind of have its own sub brain that communicates with main brain and the tentacle, right? And it just controls the one tentacle. But they all communicate with the main brain, who then communicate. So like it's maybe telling each other brain how to do it, and you kind of feel that with this iteration of Doc Ock, that the arms kind of each have their own independent brain, but they're clearly also completely working together, which becomes apparent when he gets surrounded and he whacks three people away, and the fourth arm plants itself on the ground to keep him steady while he does it. And I'm like, that's an attention to detail that I loved in the execution of this character. Obviously, a lot of work done. The arms, sometimes I'm not sure if that shot is CG or practical. Sometimes it's obvious, but the fact that you can't always tell is really good. I love that, like, they make it look so easy with these big claws just cramming this money into the bag, and I'm like, how would and I'm like, how would I shoot that? And I'm like, well, I would just pull the money out of the bag and then play it in reverse, and it looks super accurate, real tight and punchy, and just I had so much fun with little details in this movie like that. Just the way the hands were cramming the money into the bags when he was robbing the bank. It was so much fun.
Yeah, no, it's God, it's so good. And yeah, going back again to the scene in the hospital, the horror, the Sam Raimi horror sequence, which I've
was so good.
Like, I've seen something online in the past where it's like it talks about that sequence as it's like its own little short film, just because it's Sam Raimi unleashed.
Very, very like Evil Dead, very Army of Darkness.
And it's so great, like everything about that. I love the camera shots and the way the actors perform, like with the exaggerated screams and and the quick dart of the eyes, and it's just
just so enough shake in the camera for it to feel kinetic, but not so much that you can't see what's going on.
Yeah, and you talked earlier about and it's not even always about like sort of wild camera shots. There's shots in that sequence where the camera is like, it will be absolutely still. And there's just like,
and then the hand comes up with the chainsaw.
Yeah.
Again, very Army of Darkness, very Evil Dead, which are also great movies. We should talk about those sometime. Have you ever seen Army of Darkness?
No, but I'll tell you what. It's funny because you would think that the Spider-Man movies would have been my introduction to Sam Raimi, but in fact they were not, because I had seen the film Darkman before.
Okay. Wow. Early Liam Neeson.
Yeah. And so when I saw this sequence, I was able to appreciate how Sam Raimi it was. Because no, man, like it was the weirdest thing. Darkman for some reason was like my obsession for a crazy second. I even dressed up as Darkman one Halloween.
Oh wow, that's dedication.
I don't know how that happened, but it did. I
haven't seen that movie. Oh my god! I mean, I've seen it. We rented it probably on VHS, and God, I'm just checking again. Army of Darkness, 1992. That movie's 30 years old, and that was my introduction to Bruce Campbell as well. So,
well, and it's funny because Bruce Campbell actually, I mean, of course, this won't shock anybody. He has a cameo at the end of Darkman, because when Westlake, that's Liam Neeson's character, when he puts on like the final face of the movie to disappear into the crowd, it's Bruce Campbell.
Okay.
But yeah, well, okay, off into the weeds again, but at least we're talking about Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
But the point is,
Campbell, who has a role in this film.
Yeah. So the point being, I was familiar with Sam Raimi's horror filmmaking, So when this sequence happened, I was like, oh yeah, I recognize some of this stuff.
Now you got me wanting to talk about Army of Darkness, because that movie is so ridiculous. I love it.
I still have never seen it. It's so strange. It's probably just because it seems like such a bizarre movie, but I don't know why that would hold me back from watching it. But I'll have to check it out sometime. But
well, if I put it on the schedule, I can force you.
Well, we'll see.
That's how we do things around here.
But yeah, no, and I just love like again, like you've got all those horror elements. You've got the woman being pulled into the shadows
and her fingernail like dragging it,
scratching into the floor, which totally plausible.
Yeah, right.
And then the whole sequence is capped off with him standing there and the tentacles going up and his arms dropping and going, no. It's just perfect.
Alfred Molina does get to chew up some scenery in this movie. And like the way that the camera, like sometimes the traditional close-up is the camera's sort of like here, but Raimi likes to do a close-up where the camera's there and the character's like, and so you're getting them in profile over their shoulder, and like it's so fun because it gives a different feel. You're like when you're facing them, it's at that openness, whereas over the shoulder, it seems more like I'm whispering a secret. It seems more sinister, just subtly in the way that we subconsciously read body language of other people. It just gives a different vibe, and he gets to overact his ass off because he's possessed by artificially intelligent tentacles.
But what makes that land so wonderfully is, which by the way, so we're talking about performance now, just have to give all the applause in the world to Alfred Molina. He is just like an absolutely, it's such a stunning performance. But what sells it so wonderfully is we get those earlier scenes just of Otto being a normal man and the stuff
and a good man,
him and his wife talking to Peter, and it's very domestic almost, even though they're talking about these outlandish scientific things.
There's an ease in they're comfortable.
Yeah. And I remember, it's funny because, and again, this was very early back in the days of not superhero movies overall, but certainly like Marvel superhero movies. And I remember watching this in the theater, and I could almost sense the audience being uncomfortable with like how normal some of these scenes were, because they've come to this movie for like high octane action sequences and stuff, but when there's just like the guy who's going to be the villain of the movie is sitting there talking about with his wife about how they met and wooing her with poetry and
story stuff. And he's super friendly to Peter, and he's idealistic. Like there's a lot to like about Otto Octavius. I don't want to diminish, like he did some pretty terrible freaking things, murdered an operating room full of doctors.
But he wasn't
a comic book, like he's not fully responsible.
Yeah, he wasn't in control. Like Otto, the actual man, he may be overconfident, certainly.
Like we all have our flaws, and he's got his, but.
Which is why it was so nice. I mean, obviously, he does like forcefully regain control of himself at the end of this film, but it's also why I enjoyed so much getting more time with the restored Otto in No Way Home, because he's such a good character, and it's fun to see him as just himself, after seeing all the horrible things,
right?
He did as Doc Ock.
But like when he's playing bad guy, like he's great in that role too, which is, I don't know, like let's talk about the original Spider-Man that we talked about a month and a half ago. You can say all you want about Willem Dafoe's portrayal of that character, but it ain't subtle.
Yes.
And Alpha Molina was like, well, if that's what we're doing, that's what we're doing. And I also like that it was a little bit more than he wasn't just cackling villain. He was a man conflicted between his ambition and his ideals.
Yeah, because even like under the control of the arms, he has moments where he's like, steal it, I'm not a criminal, but then like then they talk him into, it's like, you're right, the real crime would not be finishing what we started. Yeah, it's like maybe you want to secure that one little tiny piece a little bit.
How do I keep them from taking control of me? This exposed piece of electronics right here. That I'll now point out to you.
It's like, I mean, that totally is Chekhov's gun. It's like, we're gonna go ahead. Oh, not to worry. I've installed this tech right here that will keep me completely protected.
Like, it's a little bit quirky. It's not. It waves its hands at things that other stories couldn't get away with. But again,
well, no, but that's, and we're poking fun at it, but like sure. that's the joy of these types of movies. It's like, yeah, obviously you know that that's going to be a problem, but there's delight in stuff like that.
Here's my read why this movie is still so well loved all these years later, okay? Because it is a popcorn movie that is punching above its weight class. In the commitment of the actors, in their comedy, most of the funny moments land pretty well. The CG is good, and the emotional delivery, especially of what Tobey Maguire is having to do as he's sort of learning to navigate the very stressful realities of adult life.
Yeah. There was I remember the line that I remember hearing, it was probably from critics at the time, and I don't necessarily agree with the premise of the statement because I think it's just a way to talk down to comic book films. But I understand like what they were getting at. What they were saying was, this is a comic book movie for people who don't like comic book movies.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason they were saying that is just because there's such an emotional sincerity to this movie, and it was tackling things that at the time you might not have expected to see in comic book superhero movies. But in that way, it was ahead of its time. And now, as many shots as I love to take at like MCU movies, you do see those films like really focusing in on the personal sort of at turns like trauma and
sometimes
it's a trauma, but also like, even if it's a lighthearted movie and there's comedy, it's still about the person, not about the superpower. And so, and like I said, I think that this was definitely a movie that showed that type of thing was possible. But
I mean, maybe even Spider-Man 1 did that just as well. But still, your point is well taken. I'm sorry. I just read this and it made me laugh. Kartik, thank you. That will never die. Never. Yeah. And Sean says Iron Man 3 was almost entirely about Tony's PTSD, which is accurate. A lot of people didn't like the film. It was decidedly okay.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't personally. I don't like it as much as the other Iron Man films, because I think that Jon Favreau had a very particular style that, for me, I associate with Iron Man that I prefer. But I do appreciate that it's dealt with, trauma and stuff like that. But anyway, again, getting sidetracked.
We're getting what? How dare you, sir? But yeah, so there's this thought swirling in my head about what this film sort of means big picture wise, because it does feel like this was the one that went, whoa, superhero movies can be great. Because I still think this movie is great. It's not perfect. We've already bagged on it a time or two for different things.
Well, and here's the thing about that. Like, somebody said the other day, oh, I loved this thing. Wasn't perfect, though. I'm going to be honest here. Like, nothing's perfect.
Nothing's perfect. We've
yeah, I maybe have, like, I always say my one exception to that is always Amadeus, because I actually do consider that to be a perfect film. Yeah, but aside from that, nothing's perfect.
Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse might be perfect, okay. But like
everybody has their one exception.
Everybody has that one where it's like, wait a minute.
But in general, like, don't ever go into anything expecting it to be perfect, because especially as time passes, because things always change, and so even if there was something that you at one time thought was perfect, you might change your mind about that. It's everything has, like, if everything like that we loved was perfect, that would actually be that's boring, because
and the thing is, like, perfect is not a thing that anybody will ever agree on. Yeah. So, like, if I give, like, what's the next step down from that? Excellent. This movie is excellent. Exactly. It really is. We've been going for about an hour. You want to do a mid-roll?
Sure.
Okay, great. Hi, viewers. How you doing? Thank you for being here. Hi. There's not a whole lot of you watching live. There's a few of you, but thank you for being here. We really do appreciate it. I know that there's probably House of the Dragon previews going on somewhere right now, and I understand that people want to watch that, but there's a handful of you here right now, so thank you. If you're watching this later, thanks for checking out the replay. We're here every Sunday.
They'll all come crawling back in 7 weeks.
Yeah, just you wait. But like, hey, we are thankful, and we're going to still continue to do this. I'm not surprised our viewership is down. We kind of knew this might happen.
Yeah.
But that being said, what's coming up on the horizon? Well, we will be talking about House of the Dragon. We will be talking about the Rings of Power, especially like probably the weeks after each of those shows end, respectively.
Yeah, and I'm really going to be looking forward to talking about the Rings of Power, especially because as you guys know, I've kind of had a lot of reservations about the show going in, but spoiler alert, I love it.
Can I say something to that effect, to that topic? Just real quick. You worry about stuff a lot that turns out to be nothing. I follow you on Twitter. I know.
I know.
Oh, wait a minute. Just for you, Kartik, it's Hot D and Laudertrop. You're welcome.
Where's,
You know what, John? We have
where's that
patrons. You like
band?
them, don't you?
What?
I said we have patrons. You like them, don't you?
Depends on their pronunciation of certain things.
Right. Well, we'll find out. Maybe I'll put up a poll or something. Our Patreon High Council consists of this dude right here, our alpha patron, ridiculous Ed Tollett. Thank you, buddy. Love you much. But also Lord John Bronsteen the Wise. Thank you, counselors, for your dedicated service to the realm. I'm going to change all of these titles soon. Pretty soon, everybody's going to be dragons. You heard it here first. Everybody's becoming dragons because we're here to be dragons, and it's better than having a high council. What better than like elder dragons, right? So become a patron, become a dragon. Uh, we they, but until they ascended to dragonhood, they will continue to be supported. The High Council will continue to be supported by the nobility of the realm, including the Cloaked One of the Underworld, Ryan Stavka, the Russian Quartermaster, Reflective Rambling, Arch-Maester Emma, Kate, Mistress of the House of Books, Jared Kozal, Doctor of Dragons, Lady Maura of Starfall, and Lady Rita, the Unbound. Thank you, patrons, very much. We love you guys. Um, let's talk about what's coming up. John, what else is coming up?
As for me, nothing right now. Just until I'm like doing better. I actually found out that I haven't been feeling well lately, and I found out the reason is because I do have some issues with my sinuses that have to be resolved. So hopefully I'll get that taken care of in the next week or so, and then I'll start thinking about stuff that I might want to do again. But yeah, the incentive to do my own streams is not there while I'm feeling like crap. So
I feel you on that, man. I do. Sometimes I get tired of it too. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it's always fun while I'm doing it, but sometimes it's like, I have to get ready. It is what it is. We all like. I do love to stream, but sometimes the run up to it's not always great. So yeah, a couple of things. Then like, other than the couple of fantasy shows, there's supposed to be a show called Andor coming out soon. We might find a way to sneak that in. Willow is still a little ways out, I think November, but that'll be coming up. I said this at the top, but I'll say it again here in the mid roll. We're going to start doing a lot more D&D content, probably once a month. Have a conversation because the new iteration of the game is sort of on the horizon a couple years out, and I really just want to talk about some of the proposed changes. It will be conversations with people who understand the rules well, for people who understand the rules well. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to teach you to play D&D. We're going to talk about what's different between what exists in the game now and the sort of content that they'll be presenting to us as we talk about what we like about the proposed changes, what we don't, and try to make our voices heard so that in 2 years when the new rule set comes out, we can feel like we have some ownership of it. We tested that stuff, and we liked that and it made it, and we didn't like that, and lo and behold, they changed it. Might actually happen. And I'm really happy with Wizards of the Coast for sort of reaching out to the community like that. to use us as a resource because we're the ones that they want to sell stuff to. Why don't you ask? Why don't you, ask us what we want to buy? So yeah, I think we'll be doing a lot more of that. I will have on. Gosh, I just know so many D&D people, but I'll be having them on and we'll talk about it. And the first one very soon, maybe even next week if we can't think of something better, John.
Okay, cool. That'll, yeah, as you say, that'll give me a week off, and
right, right.
And
aren't you hopefully recovering maybe from whatever's wrong in your sinuses? You don't have to answer, but are you maybe going to have surgery for it?
No, I think this is more information than anybody needs to know. But
you don't need to say anything you're not comfortable with.
Yeah, no, I think they're just gonna end up sticking something up my nose, and it'll be a minor thing, nothing to get excited about. But I just the sooner it's taken care of, the better. Because today I woke up and I was a lot more dizzy than I have been the past few days. Equilibrium all messed up, that type of thing. So, so yeah, it comes and it goes. So, but hopefully it'll be taken care of and I'll be back to normal.
Yeah, I see you, Kartik. Kartik is, if we watch Denis Villeneuve, we do watch Denis Villeneuve. I think John has already done Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, and once upon a time I had mentioned that I actually would love to do another stream on it too, because it's a big favorite of mine. But we just have to find somebody to come on to talk about it.
And I guessed it on somebody else's channel. I think Cecilia on Geekstralia to talk about Dune.
Oh, and I did a stream on Dune as well. So
yeah, so we actually have done those, Kartik, but Arrival, neither one of us have done, and I like that movie.
Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the ones that I've had on my list of movies to do and to invite you on for, Stephen.
You want to just do it here next week?
I know you're a fan. Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
Kartik, this one's for you, buddy. We're going to do Arrival next week. Cool. Thanks for the help. All right.
No, it's funny, Kartik. If you go to find the Blade Runner 2049 one, that was one of my earlier streams. So you're gonna get a lot of me going,
yeah, you're a lot better than you. Yeah, the early stuff always feels rough when I look back at it,
But but I did have oh God, who did I have on for that?
Yeah, it's been a minute. We've been doing this a long time, Like I say, I know I talked about Dune. I'm pretty sure it was on Geekstralia.
Yeah, no, sorry, my mind's just going blank all of a sudden.
But God, I guess it's been a year ago. It's great movies though.
Yeah, no, I just know I had somebody really good on for that. My mind's just completely blank right now. It's whenever I have to think of something I can never remember. Right. It'll come to me in a couple minutes when we're talking about something completely different. Anyway, it was a good stream. You just gotta get past my stuttering.
Which one? Oh, Blade Runner, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to find it right now.
Oh, that's right. I had poor Quentin on.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Somebody that doesn't get too much, I've never had poor Quentin. But yeah, that's right. That's right. I just got it.
It's because that was, that was actually a really nice treat because, well, there weren't too many people who I knew would be interested to talk about Blade Runner 2049. And then it was, I think somebody told me that they really liked the movie and they got in contact with him. I'm saying all this because that was like, as I said, it was very early in me doing stuff on my channel. And in those days, I was all about like, I wanted to meet people and have them on, not so much just to talk about whatever the topic was, but just to get to talk to people I was interested in meeting. So that was a real nice treat.
Yeah. I was there in the chat for that one. It was cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so yeah, I guess Arrival next week. That's a good mid-roll. Let's stop talking about the other thing and go back to talking about the other thing that we were talking about before we talked about the other thing, which is this gentleman right here, Spider-Man. Spider-Man. I love it.
Peter P. Spider-Man.
Right, right, exactly. Peter P. Spider-Man. Okay, I mentioned it at the beginning. Said we get into it. The train scene. Let's just dive right in because it's one of my favorites. It's so fun and inventive with the way they interact with the environment. It feels very frenetic because you're on top of a train. You can't always see what angle things are coming from, and sometimes it's going through the train. And but like it all feels right, quote unquote, when it comes to the physics of the world. Like he's not floating in air when he shouldn't be, or because there's an acceleration during and deceleration at the top of a jump and an acceleration as you go back towards the ground. And the human eye can very easily spot when that's not right.
Yeah, and I really got to stop doing this, but it's a Marvel movie, so like I can't help but compare it to other Marvel films.
That's fine.
But like, and all right, I'm gonna be completely like straightforward here because usually like I overdo it or I try and come back from it a bit. My issue with a lot of MCU movies has been the fact that actually I think a lot of them like they excel in like the first 2/3 of the films, and then we get to like CGI action sequences and physics go out the window. And that's why it's refreshing to look at stuff where actually they are kind of paying attention to.
Part of the problem with that, and I'm coming to understand, is the way Disney engages with their animators. Sometimes the animators, the left hand and the right hand, don't know what the other one is doing, which will actually circle me back to what I think may have gone wrong with the one thing of physics, like which happens during this scene. The train is traveling down the tracks. It's in New York. It's heading towards the water. Doc Ock grabs Spider-Man and throws him in the direction of travel of the train. So he's traveling faster than Doc Ock now because he threw him forward. And he kind of like has to do the, scrunch up thing, and he goes flying through the footbridge. And then he comes out and he's somehow behind Doc Ock coming in. And I think that might be one animation house working on the throw and another animation house working on the coming back, and they're not necessarily being the right continuity between the two. And that happens in modern Marvel movies a lot, actually.
Yeah, because what I was reading about with that is like they hand it over to the effects artist, but you don't have like the people like in charge of the actual visuals for the rest of the movie, like helping out with that part. It's left to the animators who have very little time. So yeah, that's a big problem that I have a lot of sympathy for, but unfortunately it does kind of, and actually, and again, this is derailing, but I want to say it's because it probably will explain like why I'm a bit harsh on parts of this particular movie. It was mentioned that by like the effects people that we're talking about. They use Black Panther specifically as, you know, an example where you get to the last portion of the movie and visually it looked so completely different from the rest of the movie. And that's what I felt watching it. And so it feels good to know at least that, you know, that it wasn't just like me, you know, having an issue with it, that there's a reason for why that was. And but I don't know if like Marvel and Disney are going to change their approach.
I don't know either. But you know, excuse me, I don't know if they're going to change the way they do business either. But you know, I will say this movie does a pretty good job of feeling right.
Yeah.
It helps that Spider-Man's agility is so like dialed up to 11 that he can physically do things the rest of us can't, and the way he sticks to surfaces, and it helps that they can do the stretchy web thing, and like that like it's a believable that it's got this sort of elasticity but tensile strength, and it's good. I find the train scene to be really solid and fun way to use the environment, with the other train coming by and he's got to lay flat, you know, and then Doc Ock is reaching through from one window through the other window to grab him and stuff. And like the lay flat scene where they're going under the bridge, it's just all of it is really fun. But
I remember when they released the trailer for this movie way back, and first of all, like it was actually a really well edited trailer, but it was also the most egregious example of giving away the plot of the entire movie there's ever been. But they used a lot of like effect shots from like this sequence and, you know, other stuff in the movie, and I remember just being blown away seeing some of the stuff because it was so good and had such kinetic energy, and so it just got you excited for the movie. And then when you saw the movie, it wasn't less exciting for the fact that they had put some of the stuff in the trailer. It was still like incredibly thrilling. So yeah, it's just I think it's one of the best you know, action / effect sequences in any of these types of movies.
It lasts a little bit longer than I remember too. It also comes later in the film than I remembered. But as great as the fight scene is, my favorite part of the whole movie comes right after that.
Yeah.
Where he's like tries stopping it with his foot. That doesn't work. Try some webs. Okay, that didn't work. Try a whole bunch more webs. Give my ugliest try hard face I've got. And then to feel like he's given everything, you know, because he felt was and that moment when he starts to fall and you see all the hands come in, it's maybe one of the best shots in filmmaking. Like there's something about that just it like it speaks to my very soul, that idea of like, you make us all want to be better people. We, you know, we need you. We recognize you for what you're doing. I'm getting emotional just thinking about it.
And I was thinking about this the other day. This notion of we're very used to a lot of stories these days that talk about how like how crappy things are and our darker impulses and all that stuff. And we like those stories, you know. But then sometimes it is just really nice to watch stories that are sort of reaffirming about the good side of human nature and hope. And that's what this sequence really drives home for me. And just, you know, them all catching him with their hands and then pulling him in, and just Danny Elfman's score and and then he's just a kid, and then the two kids who bring the mask over, and and they say, don't worry, we won't tell no one, and you believe all of them that they will all keep this secret. There's I don't have any cynicism about that.
And it could feel very cheesy, but you saw how genuine he was. They all saw it, and they do owe him their lives.
Yeah.
And to the point of you got to go through me, and then everybody comes out, and of course, but it's Doc Ock.
And then it's like
super villain.
Okay.
And Peter's like, you guys can't do this. I have to be the one to do this, but the dynamics at play in that scene are so great. He's a kid, no older than my son, and that's not an old dude saying that, it's I love this movie. I'm really glad we did this week because it gave me the excuse to watch it again. And I just did find myself grinning from ear to ear, and holy crap, Wheezy. That's disgusting. It is not that here. It has been rainy today, but we had quite the heat for a while. But just stay in the shade, drink something cold, smoke something fun, and
which actually reminds me of how
not to be messed with.
It reminds me of how happy I am, although I can't say the same for my wallet, that I just got the air conditioning fixed in my car.
Right. I remember you posting about that earlier.
Because that has been absolutely dreadful. It hasn't been that hot here, but it's been pretty damn hot.
Right.
So
hot enough that rolling the windows down don't help.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know where you live, Wheezy. I lived in the same town that Wheezy lives in now for a couple years in high school. Which was weird when we figured that out, but is very cool.
Just really quick, I want to shout out a couple, because we were just talking about the people on the train and the people of New York. I just love some of the little beats that we get from the New Yorkers in this movie. I love when Peter's trying to get the pizza delivered, so he changes into Spider-Man and he swings, and then the guy goes, "Whoa, he just stole that guy's pizzas."
That's a good line. It's funny.
And then the guy gets the slice and he goes to try and eat it, and then
there's gonna be web on some of that pizza, that's all I'm saying. And then he comes out of the janitor's closet, and that might be a time where I'm like, can we move this along?
No, that's why I love it. It's
but I also get that that's a personal taste thing. This movie is great. It's not perfect. That's one of the things that's not perfect is the broom closet gag.
I love how awkward that is, and
it is extremely cringe.
And then later on, when Peter's on the way to the play and he's on the bike and the car comes into it and he flips backward, and the kids are like, "Whoa, how'd you do that?" And he says, vegetables, and he's like, "That's what my mom is always saying. I just never actually believed her."
It does have a great little sense of humor, doesn't it?
Yeah. It does. But yeah, there's just so much. Yeah, it's great, and that's the thing I've always noticed about. I say always. There's only a couple of examples of it because, he's just done the Spider-Man movies, and then he also did Doctor Strange. But what I like is that his New York City always feels alive and vibrant. like even I noticed in Doctor Strange, there's the sequence in the beginning, and you see like New Yorkers running around, and you get like point of view shots of them and stuff, and so it always feels like he's conscious of what the citizens, like their point of view and all that. And I just think it makes these movies feel more real in a way.
Yeah, it definitely feels like, I mean, I've never been to New York, but it definitely has this feel of being a very specific place, and it's sort of like having its own identity. It's a little bit rough on the outside and weird sometimes. Like the elevator ride where the guy's talking to him about his costume, and it's just like so, again, kind of awkward and maybe a little bit too long, but maybe that one landed with me a little bit more just because, I don't know. But yeah, a very awkward elevator scene was very funny.
The crotch comp.
Yeah, it's like, that's too much information, buddy.
Oh God. And we haven't really talked about him much, but like J.K. Simmons just.
I was just literally thinking J. Jonah Jameson.
And he's even better in this one. And of course you've got the meme that is eternal.
Yeah, the laugh meme.
The laugh. It's like, can you give me an advance? It's what, you serious? For what? Standing there? Oh God. And then when your wife called, she lost the checkbook. Thanks for the good news.
Yeah. Like, again, another character who just gets to eat every scene he's in.
Yeah.
But yeah, J.K. Simmons does the same. We talked about this last time too, just how great he is as this specific character. So loud and obnoxious, and just you want to wring his stupid neck, but you can't help but love it because of like one of the aspects of this movie that's comic book over the top. But it's so fun that you just ignore the fact because it's not over the top from the perspective of the people who live in that world. They take it seriously. It just works. It just works. And J.K. Simmons can chew up some scenery, man.
Yeah, and it's great because he even and he even gets moments where he just like dial it back down only to come back up. Like I love the scene where he's all remorseful. He's like, Spider-Man was a hero. I just couldn't see it. He was. And then you hear the web noise. And it's like, he was a thief, a criminal. He's a menace to the entire city.
One of my other favorite from him was like when he looks down the aisle and you've got like the bridal march playing. And then the way his expression just goes flat. And he's like, telling the caterer not to open the caviar. And it's like, my God, that's where your brain goes, huh? And the thing is, like, his son is a good guy. Like, there's
and it's not fair what happens. I will never forget. Every time I watch this movie, I will hear the audience in that moment when the girl hands him the note. Because I remember the entire audience went, oh! Yeah, it's great. That look on his face.
He should not get married to someone that doesn't want to be married to him, but I feel bad for him because he's a good dude. He didn't do anything wrong. He's just not the one that she was really into.
Yeah.
And she had to live her truth.
Oh God. But yeah, and that's what's like, we made a comment about this on the first movie, like the comedy in these movies is great, and it counterbalances drama, because as we've been saying, there's real dramatic stakes in these movies, and you feel it. It's authentic. It's never cheapened by the bits of comedy, but they're both there so that you can feel the weight of what's going on, but then also you don't want it to drag you down too far. So it has just absolutely inspired moments of comedy that that feel true to it, and I love that. So yeah, I just love this movie so much.
Yeah, it really is great. Here's my problem with it. I'm not sure what else to say about it. I feel like I've kind of said everything. And maybe part of it is that we talked about the first one so recently, and it does sort of carry a lot of the ideals of that movie forward.
All right. Well, okay. Here's someone we didn't talk about was Aunt May.
Okay, that's fair.
She's great in this movie. And even the stuff like earlier on, I love the stuff where you can tell she's carrying a lot on her shoulders, and she's got the bills piling up, and then the part where she gives Peter the $20 bill, and he tries to refuse it, and but she needs that. She needs to be able to take care of him, and it's just like, it's such an emotionally raw moment. It's just, again, because you've got like these wonderful sort of domestic scenarios in this movie that make you feel that these are living, breathing characters.
Right. Feels homey.
Yeah. And then again, we mentioned it earlier, but yeah, the scene where Peter confesses, what actually happened. It's because she's so quiet throughout his confession, and it's so heartbreaking when then he reaches out his hand and she pulls back, and she just doesn't say anything, and she stands up and walks upstairs. I mean,
but it felt real,
completely understandable and realistic, but it's so heartbreaking and difficult to watch that, but then also wonderful when he comes back to the house, and she says, water over the dam or under the bridge,
Yeah, and you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah,
Rosemary Harris is that actress's name, and she's really great in it.
Yeah, and obviously we've gotten kind of a reinvention of the Aunt May character in the newer films with Marissa Tomei, but it is kind of great getting the sort of traditional, like, this is
and Aunt May in the comics is a little older, and Rosemary Harris delivered such a warm, caring, human, like in this moment she has mixed emotions and she doesn't know what to say to Peter, so she leaves. So she maybe doesn't even say something hurtful to him in the moment. She's processing, and she eventually she can't hold it against Peter. He didn't know, obviously. I'm glad that she made her peace with it. But yeah, I guess again, it comes back to that idea of them being humans with godlike powers. They continue to have all the problems that people have, problems that you can't punch away.
Yeah.
It's nice that they can punch some of their problems, but that just provides the great backdrop for the struggles where they can't do that. And that's what this movie does really, really well. And it's what it's setting out to do from the beginning, is to give Peter stuff he can't handle. because he's trying to do too much.
Yeah. It's funny because, referencing No Way Home again, I love the fact that, everything that he's going through in this movie feels so heavy. And, I just love him, talking about it in No Way Home, where he's like, existential crisis. It's just funny. It's like, yeah, man, you were going through it in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just sort of like, I don't know. I really like this movie. I don't know I don't know what else to say. I think I've really covered it all. John, if there's something else you want to say, like we were supposed to have Nessie and she would have filled up another 30 minutes with everything she had to say, I'm sure. But, I kind of have run the course.
Well, it's funny because, and you're not wrong, because we so recently talked about the first one. There's a lot of foundational stuff that we've already gotten out of the way,
right?
And so I was kind of looking forward to having Nessie on here to bring her new feelings to it, and it was. I'll be completely honest. For a hot second, I was considering calling up Kelly half an hour before.
She might be indisposed still. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
she'll be in Michigan.
Well, I hadn't heard from her much lately, so I wasn't sure that I wanted to bother her. But it would have been hilarious. That would have been so living up to my reputation
for a little while. Or anyway. But yeah, I'm with you, because Kelly's always great, especially for Marvel stuff.
Yeah. But no, let me think of some other stuff from this.
I mean, we can end it now if I don't want to force us to try to find something.
Well, no,
I will say this. I will. All right, it's been mentioned a couple of times. I thought Danny Elfman crushed it in this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Danny Elfman sometimes. He's got a very bombastic style. But I love what he did with, in the right movie, it works. And the thing is, it's definitely a Danny Elfman score, but it's not the Batman score, or, it's not.
Well, because it has
Nightmare Before Christmas or Edward Scissorhands. It's not, and it's not trying to be. It's trying to be a superhero.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, because so many people identify Danny Elfman with Tim Burton, and that's a very particular style.
Boys ready.
Although you do get an artistic rendition of him in the opening credits, so at least from the back. So I saw that and I was like, boom saw. No, but people usually identify Danny Elfman with that Tim Burton style, and I think that's also why when these movies came out, I know a lot of film score people were like, well, it's not as good as his Batman stuff, but it's not supposed to be the same style.
And the whole feel of the movie is different, and I think Danny Elfman actually does a great job of still running his music. I knew it was Danny Elfman before I saw his name on the screen, just listening to it. There's something about the way he employs, especially horns, I think. But it was great. It carried the mood of the film.
Yeah, and it has and that's the thing, that's one of the gripes I always have, especially when a composer, a very acclaimed composer, comes out with, does a new theme for a new movie, and people are always like, yeah, but it's not as good as his older stuff. It's but
different. Come on.
It's different, and now these his work on the Spider-Man films, I think, is iconic in its own right now. Like, you hear that opening main title and like that's Spider-Man, and like it's just and that's why I even geeked out a bit when you get to hear a couple notes of it in No Way Home when he and Otto are talking. You know, that was fun. And then on a separate note, they also threw in some notes of James Horner's music from The Amazing Spider-Man for the
Andrew Garfield.
Yeah, for Andrew Garfield's character. So, but yeah, it's a stunning score. This one especially, like I love the music for the first one as well, but there's just something about his score for this film that really,
it just works.
Yeah, it's firing on all cylinders. I love his theme for Doc Ock and
but again, it's one of those, like, Danny Elfman has the style that's unique enough that I do not pay attention to who scores what when, the way you do. It's just never been a thing for me. But I heard the opening and I'm like, oh, that's Danny Elfman. I know that sound. And then, of course, his name pops up in the credits, and I'm like, yep, I think I'm going to pay attention to this a little bit more than I normally do, just because I knew it would be part of the conversation we had later today, which is happening now, where I'm like, actually, the music's really good in this.
Yeah.
It's subtle where it needs to be subtle. It's bombastic where it needs to be. And let's face it, Danny Elfman does that sort of like high energy, bombastic style really well.
Well, Danny Elfman has said one of my favorite quotes about film scores. But I understand why people sometimes say this, but it's not for me. He said that he often hears composers and filmmakers saying the best film score is the score you never notice.
Yeah.
And it's like, and he was like, no, I want to notice the music. And so do I. Like, I want to be thrilled by that music and be aware of it because it doesn't take me out of the movie. It enhances the experience.
Yeah. What's that famous Hitchcock conversation, like where he's filming a movie and there's a bunch of people in the lifeboat and he's having a conversation with the composer about there not being music. He's like, there shouldn't be music in this scene because, like, where it's the middle of the ocean, where would there be an orchestra? And the answer is the same place you set your camera,
Yeah.
Which, it's an important thing.
I would have just punched the person who said that because, like,
no, that's actually a great response.
No, I mean the first.
Oh, I believe it was Alfred Hitchcock.
Because it's like, really? Do you think that there's an in-world orchestra playing the score in every other movie?
I think he probably had that moment where, because real talk, in the film there is music, there is an orchestra playing over those scenes. So, like, he was convinced, but it was a real, it's fun to think because this was obviously early days of cinema too. I could be wrong about it being Hitchcock, but it was very early days of cinema. And oh, good point. Like, music in movie is good. And again, sometimes knowing when to play nothing, which happens a time or two where there's no music at all. And with a small, sometimes the most powerful thing a musician can do is nothing. I solidly believe that. I also understand the idea of, like, the score that you don't notice is the best one. I understand that sentiment, and I think it does resonate with me to a certain extent. But then there are times where I'm like, the music is pumping and the action is happening and the hero is trying their hardest and making a really ugly face while they do it. And
well, think back to
just, like, it adds to the overall experience in a way. And maybe even if I am noticing it, because guess what else I'm noticing? What my eyes are saying. Like,
yeah. the thing I always say, it's like, think back to your childhood and all the movies that you really loved. You didn't tell me you didn't notice the music in any of them. In most cases, the music in those films was one of the best parts, and you owned the soundtrack albums and you played stuff over and over and over
Star
again.
Wars, man, Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly.
Like love Danny Elfman, but let's be real, nobody does it like John Williams. Love you, Danny Elfman. You've done some great work.
Imagine if George Lucas has said, for the music for Star Wars, I don't want people to even notice.
Like, right. No, you want that dun, dun, that big fanfare.
Yeah.
Or like the Imperial March. Yeah, just. But then again, you get something like the Force theme, and it's subtle enough that if you're just watching, where you're watching the film and he's staring off at the double sunset, like it does sort of disappear into the background. It becomes subconscious in a way for some of us. Anyway, we're way off track again.
Yeah, but
long and short of it is overall great soundtrack.
But you mentioned the score, so like right. I didn't know I was going to go off in a bunch.
Of course, that's why I brought it up.
But I love the score, and I do have the soundtrack, obviously, for it. The only thing that I'm annoyed with is it's actually a rather abbreviated soundtrack, and I'm dying for them to do a nice expanded release so I can get that, because you guys know I love my expanded soundtracks.
Kartik says that in the OST for Spider-Man 2 in India, I'm not sure what that means, I'm sorry. I'm not sure what an OST is, but it's probably like localization.
Original soundtrack.
Oh, okay. Included a song by Strings from Pakistan, one of the favorite bands when they were a kid. That's really cool.
I don't know what I can't speak to the soundtrack in India, but I will say that there were two different soundtrack albums released in the US. One was the score album, which still had two songs on it, one of them being Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. Mm-hmm. And then there was another soundtrack release that had songs. It was like music from and inspired by, which I've like.
Did it have?
That always makes me roll my eyes, because it's like, that's not the soundtrack I want.
Does it have the music that the street performer is playing on her violin? Spider-Man, Spider-Man.
I do
like terrible high note and everything. Please.
That's not on the score album. I cannot speak as to whether it made it on the other album.
Because another highlight of the movie is this lady singing her terrible rendition of the Spider-Man.
Oh, Toby's face, and at first he's interested, kind of into it for a second, then he's like
some horror. Be a capable violin player, but she is not a singer, folks. She's not a singer. All right. Anything else you want to say about this movie?
Just okay. I think we kind of dodged talking about him a bit, because I said I wasn't a fan of
James Franco.
But Harry's role in this movie, I do kind of like it, because I like the way that it all sort of culminates in that moment where, he has Doc Ock bring Spider-Man there, and then I'm going to take back which it's not really taking back what I'm saying, because I did say I like the parts where he kind of reveals himself as just a scared kid. I like the way he sort of stumbles back after taking the mask off, and the way Peter's going on about all the stuff he's going to destroy the city, he's going to marry Jane, and Harry just goes, "Peter, you killed my father." Mm-hmm. Like, to him, that's all that matters,
right?
And part of me is like, Peter, just take a second at least say, actually, no, I didn't. But obviously, like in Peter's mind, there's no time for any of that stuff. He's got to, go save the day and rescue Mary Jane and stop, the city from being sucked in. But I do like it, and it's a shame because I like what it sets up. The end with he sees his father, and and then he finds all the tech and stuff. It's just such a shame that in my opinion it was kind of squandered. And
like I don't think Spider-Man 3 is a good film. There are parts of it that I think are good, but I don't think overall it's a very good film.
There's just too much
like
jam-packed into it.
Like take Sandman out of it. Doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, we're not here to fix Spider-Man 3.
But just saying, as far as like, I think it leaves Harry, like his character, off in a very good place that sets up the next movie, and I find it interesting.
You know what's funny? When I was watching that, I felt like if this was a modern Marvel movie, this would be the post-credit scene.
Yeah, it would. And oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to say this, because you guys know how much I actually loathe post-credit sequences. But I kind of wish it was a post-credit sequence because I feel like
it's on the internet now, John. You can't delete it. It's out there
because I feel like everything else at the end of this movie has a nice sweet bow on it, and it feels like I don't have to worry about the next movie. It feels like it's a nice ending for the story, and if that sequence was an after credit sequence, it would be kind of separate. But because it's not, it's like right there, and it's like it's set up for the next movie, and I don't care for the next movie. And
so Kirby says if you have Venom, you don't need to fight with the bad guys. Here's the thing: they didn't have Venom; they had Eric Foreman. Sorry,
I'm very forgiving of things, but that was not Eddie Brock.
No, like it was. It was not like I've got no problem with Topher Grace, but it just was not good casting.
I love Topher Grace on that 70s show. I love that show, his character and stuff. But when I saw that he was cast as Venom, I was like, no.
Right. Well, anyway, that's a whole other movie that we will probably not ever talk about on this channel. At late, it'll never be the topic of conversation anyway.
Yeah. But it makes me all the happier that we got No Way Home, and so that serves, for now at least, as the cap on Toby's story. And I find it that extremely satisfying, especially all the stuff that happens at the end with Norman, and him stopping Tom Holland's Peter from killing him. I think that all that stuff is brilliant and a nice way to close off the character's arc, unless they decide to bring him back, for more multiversal hijinks, which I would not say no to. But as for Spider-Man 2, it's a
great movie.
It's
a great follow-up, a great standalone. One of the reasons that Spider-Man has continued to endure as such a beloved character, I'm sure, is this film.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say, even though, as we already put in the disclaimer, not perfect, but nothing is.
Right.
I'm going to say, for me, this is a masterpiece of, comic book, filmmaking, and a damn good film in its own right, even outside of comic book films. It is my personal favorite of the Spider-Man movies. And
again, I think for Spider-Man centric films, I probably still like Into the Spider-Verse better. But man, like the Peter they have at the beginning of that film is this Peter kind of directly referencing stuff from this movie even. Yeah, so like I love this version of Peter Parker so much, and yeah.
And I think it's part of the reason why like I was so instantly I instantly opened my heart to Into the Spider-Verse when I went to go see it, because the fact that they start off by fully referencing, stuff from
Raimi's
these
Spider-Man,
movies. Yeah,
this
it
Peter
was
Parker.
like, okay. And that was before we even knew what they were doing with like the MCU doing the multiverse and and bringing Tobey Maguire back. It was just, I appreciated the fact that that movie said we recognize these movies as uh, a very important part of the Spider-Man legacy, and we're acknowledging that right off the bat. Just like we mentioned some of it last week, just seeing the Uncle Ben from these movies, like
Mm-hmm.
animated, and his voice, the the upside down kiss, and even the train sequence from this movie. It's just, yeah, that was, I love that they did that, and so right off the bat I was like, I can get into this. This is
Mm-hmm.
a lot
Mm-hmm.
of fun.
Yeah, again, these are just their classics.
Yeah.
They were they helped redefine the tone for comic book movies to come. Like this is not MCU. You know, asterisk, MCU is acquiring things that maybe weren't always. This is not an MCU movie. It's really
Yeah.
not. Um, but you can see how the MCU grew out of looking at this film and being like, what did they do right? Oh, one last thing I want to bring up is that I love the Russian neighbor
Oh
girl.
my god, how could I forget this? Mr. Dickovich.
Right?
Um it's just so great. The Russian music playing background, the his facial expressions. and uh and his
And she
daughter
was
was
so
great too.
sweet, just very kind, and like clearly was into him. But anyway, I just loved the character. I really did.
Yeah.
Ursula is her name, and then her father is Mr. Dickovich. That's funny.
I remember again, like I remember a lot of audience reactions from this movie, and I just remember the whole theater erupting in laughter when they said his name.
Yeah, I'm looking at the cast list now, and yeah, there's a lot of like really great. Daniel Day Kim was in it. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and what's funny again, like, and I remember very specifically that I had not seen Lost yet, so I knew
Mm,
him actually from Angel.
okay, yeah, 'cause
Um,
he was like,
he was one of the Wolfram and Hart
what
guys.
was he? He
Yeah,
wasn't. He wasn't Watchers Council.
no,
Okay, all right. Well, Wolfram and Hart, got you. It's been a lot while since I've gone down the Buffyverse rabbit hole. Anyway, yo, it's 7 o'clock my time, 8 o'clock your time. We got like an hour until Hot D, and people need to go eat food and go to the bathroom and stuff, myself included.
but we
So
we got to we got to 2 hours.
we did get to the 2 hour mark. Not that we have to, but it's always nice to like, you know, to go till closing time, so to speak.
Yeah,
So
no,
yeah, I think we need to wrap this up though. I gotta pee.
but I was just so overjoyed to revisit this movie. Like I said, I feel like my appreciation for it is even greater. And now, and a lot of that, comes down to having gotten older, and and having a different viewpoint on things, and so both sort of the way I've sort of emotionally matured, and so I'm looking for different things within this movie, but also my love of film has changed and matured as well. So I'm having an appreciation for artistically for different things now watching this. So yeah, it was just a blast. So I'm glad we did this. And
fun fact, Kartik, I'm not actually in the woods.
You can tell because you've got clothes on.
Right. Right. We've had this conversation before. I would be naked if I was in the real woods. Anyway, y'all.
And on that note,
yeah, thanks for joining us. Hey, you don't know, I might not be wearing pants. Thanks for joining us, everyone. What a great movie. What a great conversation, John. For everyone here live, thank you very much. It's always great to have, the live audience. Love you guys. Go watch some House of the Dragon. We'll be talking about it once the show ends. We'll probably be talking about it literally like the next week.
Yeah.
But and real talk, been enjoying it.
Good.
So yeah. With that, we'll let you all get back to your lives. Thanks for hanging out, though, and we'll see y'all next week for Arrival at Kartik's request. We're going to talk about the Denis Villeneuve film Arrival, which is it's a great movie that I have one big problem with, but we'll talk about that.
Oh no.
Well, it is what it is. Like, it's science fiction, but anyway, we'll talk about it next week. It's a great movie with one very big flaw, in my opinion. Okay. But yeah, so we'll talk about that next week. All right. Love you guys. We'll see you then. And until then, you know what it is. Peace and be excellent to each other.